Hello, everybody. Welcome to Webinar Wednesday. My name is Martin Loffers. So with me, I have two experts. You see me on the left. And with me, I have Martin Baltussen from Blue Ridge. Martin, hi.
Hello, Martijn. Thanks for the invite.
Thanks. And Cliff from all the way from the US. Cliff, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be joining today.
Yeah, right. Okay. Welcome, everybody. All the listeners, good that you are able to join. This webinar will be recorded, and the presentation will be made available within 48 hours afterwards. Everybody is on mute, but feel free to ask questions. And you see two options to start questions. For one, you can use the chat, and then everybody can answer. But if you want to address the experts, Martin and Cliff, you can ask your questions in the panel on the right hand side. Do type in the questions, and if these questions are in line of our conversation, I hope to insert them. So keep the conversation going. So make sure that you ask your questions. We do have a Q&A at the end, and you can also vote for questions. So if there are a lot of questions, you can vote for the question from others. And if your questions are not answered or you want to talk more, we have 30 minutes afterwards into the lounge. You can sit at the table and you can talk to Martin Baltussen and Cliff Isaacson directly, like a Zoom meeting. So if you want to talk further about certain things, and we have a lot of interesting stuff to talk about, you can address these questions to them directly. All right, so let's start. First, we have done a research last year. So we did a survey among manufacturing and retail companies in Europe. And basically, what you see here in red, S&OP is the hottest thing around. But also prescriptive analytics is hot, and inventory management and with statistical forecasting. Those are the subjects we got to address this afternoon. Martin, what is your opinion on the plans of the companies you're talking with?
Yeah, I think it's pretty spot on. How we also do every year a questionnaire out to our customers, and indeed we see a huge interest in the statistical forecasting versus your inventory management, and definitely also the S&OP part, or the integrated business planning part.
All right. And what I also see, a lot of companies, they want to improve. And what we see, a few years ago, we are talking about big data. And what you see on the left side, if you are having no data, it's guessing. And if you're talking about small data, if there is big data, there should be small data. That's just logic. What is small data? That's your internal structured data called ERP, CRM, WMS, TMS, etc. And then mostly you are on a reporting area. And moving on to big data, you have your internal unstructured data, like emails and that kind of stuff. And then you go to the external structured data, and then you are looking forward, and you are going into the area of forecasting, predictive analytics, and then beyond that, prescriptive analytics. So my thing is, first you have to crawl, then stand up and walk before you can run. So Cliff, what's your opinion about how you should evolve into analytics?
Yeah, optimization is definitely the goal. I think machine learning is just a tool, but it certainly doesn't take away from the art of supply chain planning. I think we just want customers to use more sophisticated tools and actually free up time from mundane activities and spend more time in strategic activities. I think that's what intelligent prediction and optimization is really about, is freeing up the everyday activities and spending more time in analyzing and taking recommendations, optimized recommendations, and doing that strategy work. So,
all right, we will talk about optimization and the more advanced part later on. So, Martin, could you tell me about Blue Ridge? What kind
we are doing. So on the left side, you see in the supply chain planning solution, it's all about demand planning, forecast accuracy, demand sensing, and demand shaping, what we will discuss later in this presentation. How we work on inventory planning, have the lowest safety inventory as possible with meeting your service levels, which is actually the replenishment planning part, delivering towards your regional DCs or towards your stores, or every regional location where you have stock. We will replenish even over a multi-echelon inventory optimization view, but we also manage suppliers. Let's make sure that we have concepts as forward buying, for example, and the order cycle optimization. So we also work on the supplier negotiation part of it. Everything is officially backed up with an analytics engine, with all your KPI reports, but I always say also your KPE reports. So it creates dashboards for all your exceptions, so your key performance exceptions. Because I'm pretty sure that everyone in the audience is supply chain educated, and as we are true supply chain professionals, we can make a splendid planning. However, it's the daily exceptions that basically make sure that the planning is not correct anymore. And at the time you need to react on one of those exceptions, that's your time to value. On the right side, you see IBP, or our automated S&OP process. So supply chain planning is more on the planning horizon of 1 week to 6 to 9 months, and IBP goes over that planning horizon up to, for example, 24 months. Now, the other solution is price optimization and management. It's about price elasticities. Price is affecting demand and supply. So our base price optimization solution optimizes and calculates the price elasticities of the price for your product. There are several modules like net pricing, where you can have, I think everyone knows CPQ, configure price quote. So this is the price quote part of it. So you have different requests for proposals, you get replies. How do you get that in a manageable way? Approval matrices, that's all in that module. So what to do with promotions and events, markdowns, what kind of markdowns, when do you want to have promotions, and what's the influence on pricing. Also kit pricing, dependent products or products you put in a bundle or in a kit, and how do I leverage the best optimal price. And then it's also about optimization and about scenario planning. So is my price based on clean out inventory, or is my price based on maximum revenue, or on the best profit? So that all scenarios have with different approaches and different strategies based on your price elasticity. So that's in a nutshell what Blue Ridge offers in terms of solutions.
Quite a lot. All right, Blue Ridge has a American heritage, but we just heard today that Blue Ridge has acquired inventory investments in Norway. So that strengthened the footprint in Europe. But could you explain what is your footprint in Europe? What kind of customers do you have in Europe?
Yeah, we have quite a lot of customers, and as you rightfully say, Inventory Investments in Oslo has been a partner for Blue Ridge since 2008, since the start of the company. And they were a reseller implementer, and they really did a good job. So they landed over the years a lot of customers in the Nordics, one in the UK as well, in Sweden, and those customers, like the customer base of Blue Ridge, are amongst the wholesalers, the distributors, and the retailers, and some names you see here. Tele2, that is on the telecommunication side, with all different stores, mobile equipments, and television type of equipments. You see Grillstad, which is actually a food processor. So there's a manufacturing piece in it as well, but it's also about finished products distribution to different retailers. You see the REMA distribution side, but also on the technical wholesale. TES, for example, is a huge technical wholesaler, or more on the building side of things. Master Group is a big organization with brands like XL Beek and Centrum Beek, for example. And you see here some examples of customers in food processing, in automotive, in technical wholesale, in sanitary distribution, industrial electrical distribution, and this is all Europe. So this is just the main reason why Blue Ridge started a year ago with a direct organization in Europe as well, because with this customer base in Europe, and especially in the Nordics, we would like to build out in Central Europe and Eastern Europe. And that's also why the acquisition took place, because I can go forward faster with the experience of inventory investments. And if I need to grow that organically, then it takes me 2 or 3 years, and that's why this acquisition has taken place.
And you need some knowledge about implementing this kind of software, this kind of tools for supply chain planning. It is. The focus we have is wholesale distribution, retail, and we tend to go into manufacturing as well. However, it's a niche, and you need specific knowledge and specific skills to work with that. So you need to advise a supply chain planner, but also a buyer in procurement. How to work with these type of solutions, and we see customers using Microsoft Excel still. So that's a big. A big leap to take, but you need consultants for that. Yeah, right. So S&OP is like a balancing act between demand and supply. So, but you added something to it.
We this is actually our name of the game. The traditional suppliers are balancing demand and supply. However, if you forget price, then you forget. I think the biggest optimization potential. So your price influences your demand, and your price influences your supply. So if you don't see this from a triangle perspective, then you lose some optimization potential.
You see some retailers like the Media Markt, applying price optimization in the store. But that's not that common. How do you relate to your market? In our market we see, especially now with the pandemic going on, we see a lot of online sales. And if you do online sales, the price of your competitor is also more visible, and there's a lot of price scraping going on, as we say. But you can make use of that. So it's not. I don't see too much examples yet from dynamic pricing. So it depends at what time you are in the store, and that's the price you pay. But I do see a lot of looking at each other, and if someone takes a promotion on certain products, then other price strategies follow for you as well. And that's how you optimize it, and how you can optimize, especially your demand shaping part. All right. Before we go into demand shaping, what it is and how you apply it, first some figures about Blue Ridge.
So Blue Ridge had the global headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia, and the European headquarters is in Amsterdam with, since today, an office in Oslo as well. We have more than 200 customers, predominantly in the Americas and Europe, but we have customers in APAC and South America as well. Return on investment, it's typically within months, especially if you have an Excel type of planning as a backbone. A company with more than 130 people, have more than 200 years of domain expertise, and where I'm very proud of is that it's a cloud solution, and once our customers start using it, they don't walk away. So we have a very high retention rate, and one of the reasons for that is that we have a lifeline consultancy team, and that lifeline consultancy team actually starts working after go live. So we don't leave a customer alone, and we don't walk away. We have on a weekly, monthly, or quarterly basis. It depends on the subscription they have. We have meetings with our customers, and because it's cloud, we can also do some benchmarking. So we can see where certain suppliers are left behind on certain topics, and where other suppliers are walking in front of everyone. And if we see things happening that raises a question mark with our Lifeline consulting team, we start to discuss it, and we start to help them how to use the software in that circumstance better. And I think that's a great driver for that retention rate.
Yeah, and you know, you're starting with modules, not a whole enchilada. So it's smaller, bite-sized modules to implement where you can have the benefits within months.
Yeah, I'm a strong believer in quick wins. So a small step to the quick wins, and then go further. So we see customers starting from a supply chain planning side. We see customers starting from a pricing side. We don't see customers doing a big bang. And the big bang is, to my opinion, also too much the 90s. So, yeah.
No, that's in line with what I'm saying. You have to learn to crawl, to walk, and before you can run.
Yeah.
Okay, but now let's talk about demand shaping. So now we have done a webinar about demand sensing, but what is demand shaping? Let's go into that area.
Yeah. So if you look to the word demand shaping, so to purchase for specific items. So it is about influencing your demand on a certain product in order to match its planned supply. That is demand shaping. It's different than demand management, for example. Yeah. If you look at demand management, demand management actually controls and tracks a company's purchasing operation. So it's more focused on supplier relationships instead of customer relationships, and it's used to determine external spending rather than the individual product pricing. So that puts demand shaping a bit in perspective. It's much more than demand sensing, and it takes that price in there.
And an interesting thing is that, you know, with demand shaping, the commercial aspects is going into supply chain planning.
Yeah. You see that blending more and more.
All right. So what is the role then of demand shaping in the whole planning area?
So here's some examples. So on one side you have your supply planning, on the other side you have your pricing. Concept like adjust your price on shortage items to improve your service levels. So if you ask this specific question to customers, if they ever thought about that possibility, I can assure you that 90% will answer that they never came across it, thought about it, or even did it. It's also looking at price objectives versus your replenishment schedule. So it results actually in better forecasts, in proactive order management, and price to shape your demand and deplete excess inventory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But in a sense, you know, in the old days, S&OP was all about planning volumes, demand in volumes and demand in supply. And now you are taking into account the dollars or the euros.
I personally believe that S&OP is also more there to create that consensus. So finance wants you to sell against the highest profit. Sales is forecasting way too much, and supply says, how on earth I'm gonna deliver all that what finance and sales wants. So in that respect, S&OP is really a methodology to periodically make sure that you have that consensus demand, and then start working from one version of the truth. And that is not always about pricing, because that price is only in that three parties that are in S&OP is only looked at from a finance perspective, and then also from a profit perspective.
But it's interesting to see that, you know, supply chain shouldn't take prize for granted. There's a whole world out there beyond that.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Well, in the title of the webinar, we talk about intelligent prediction. So what is intelligent prediction in your opinion?
Intelligent prediction is actually in this age of artificial intelligence, many believe that it's about prediction and learning that are the essence of intelligence. Prediction and learning that are also a major functional component of machine learning, and that's a dominant technology in this age. So in our view, demand shaping starts with intelligent prediction, and that intelligent prediction goes into a lot of different topics.
Yeah. So what are the parts of this intelligent prediction?
The first thing is what is really important is learn and adapt. And if I give you an example, your promotion at the same time last year, on what quantity it did higher your forecast. So that's the first question. But do you also measure the actuality? So had that promotion, what was the forecast error? So did it actually deliver what you forecasted? And if it didn't, do you make use of that new delta in the same promotion at this time at the same year, at the same moment in time? So if you don't learn, right? Because your forecaster make the same mistake again, and perhaps he's so intelligent to remember what happened last year, and therefore he deducts it a bit. But what if you can do that in an automated way? What if you have software that actually already remembers because he has that data available, and immediately apply that in your promotion forecast? So it creates improved precision. It creates more goal-aware prediction, but it also looks at sensing, shaping type of topics, because that promotion last time, this moment in time, is that were the different variables around it, was that the same? Was there indeed during that promotion a sporting event, or was it indeed a pretty nice weather that wasn't forecasted in March? And is that the same here? And so it also gives you then options to evaluate on. And one of the things also, and that's with all our software, it's all management by exceptions. So you need to be proactively warned or proactively alerted if something changes, or if something is different, or if your demand as predicted actually even goes higher than predicted or goes lower than predicted. You would like to act immediately to make sure that you optimize your supply chain as much as possible. It's about automated decision making. So in a really demand shaping environment, I predict you that you don't hit 90% of your purchase orders, because it's all automated already out there. There are no alerts, there are no exceptions, so you can just push them through. And most of our customers do that on an automated basis already, so that they can focus on that last 10%, which isn't going through like expected, and because there are alerts. You can only do this with advanced algorithms. So the adaptive exponential smoothing algorithm that is used for ages by a lot of software suppliers for many different problems. So that's not the algorithm that's going to help you here. So you need to go into more detailed type of things like neural networking, intelligent min-max type of things. So that makes intelligent prediction different from demand shaping, and that's where it starts.
Okay. So why are you talking about prediction and not forecasting? Is that on purpose?
It is on purpose, because forecasting, in my opinion, is a kind of rule of thumb. So I do some intelligent calculations, and that's my forecast. And basically, a forecast is more or less created on historical data.
Okay.
Prediction is also taking future data, or actually other variables into account that were not taken into account for your forecast.
Okay, makes sense. All right, Cliff, can you explain what is the connection between intelligent prediction to intelligent planning?
Yeah. I mean, intelligent prediction and planning, it's the science. Supply chain planning at its heart is an art and a science. And the science piece is really taking a toolkit, abstracting a problem into looking at what are the variables that impact, and it could.
We lost you. Sorry, yeah. Could you repeat? We lost your last sentence.
Okay, sorry about that, guys. I will step in. So in intelligent planning, like
historical, but you need to look at other variables that are happening in the future, and we've seen.
So we have a bad connection between us and Georgia.
Yeah, Cliff, I advise you to go out and go in. Sorry about that, people. So intelligent planning, like Cliff said, it's more an art. It's more a science than an art. Forecast prediction, forecast with precision goes into supply chain planning, and that has the direct relation with your service levels and optimizing your inventory. And we see if we talk to planners and we talk to buyers, we see always that confidence gap. Because we always need to show that working with these type of solutions actually is an advantage, makes your life easier and makes your focus more focused on the exceptions that matter, instead of for example having 6% of your time going away with finding the data. And that makes intelligent prediction going into intelligent planning. How we use algorithms, we use analytics and automation to actually let you do your business.
So the confidence part is also to make sure that you don't think of it as a black box. You know what's happening.
Yeah. So every solution that actually can't explain you why they took that algorithm. How we give confidence levels in there. So this elasticity has a high confidence, so therefore you can take it. And the low confidences, we sometimes filter out even. So,
right. Different kind of products also mean different kind of planning. So what does it mean for intelligent prediction?
It means a couple of things. So here you see different approaches. What do you do with your intermittent demand? And how do you forecast and how do you actually optimize that? Intermittent demand, you have intermittent demand algorithms for that. However, if it's less confidence algorithms, then you go into intelligent min-max type of structures. So that's a new way of working, a new solution into intelligent planning, intelligent prediction for those intermittent demand items. If you go to fast movers, solutions, algorithms, strategies, you are much more effective than in the old days.
Can you give an example of the slow demand of slow movers?
Yeah. And I see Cliff is back. So Cliff, do you want to try it again?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the storm has passed. So
right. Okay.
This is what distinguishes solving mathematical problems and for distribution and manufacturing, because in retail, really it's focused on these fast movers, but true differentiators for in distribution, warehouse distribution, I would give an example here as classic, which is repairs, maintenance, repair, overhaul, auto parts, industrial goods, repair parts. one of the differentiating characteristics and the way to stay competitive is to support the long tail of the assortment, to have a large assortment so that, for instance, with repair parts, automotive parts for vehicles and industrial goods that have been around for a long time, you need to be able to do better statistical forecasting, and it's much more complicated than traditional methodologies where you might be able to understand behaviors of fast movers. It's interesting because there's actually an equivalency on the pricing side where it's fairly easy to measure willingness to pay and price sensitivity for fast-moving items. You would imagine there's competitive substitutes. But when you get into the long tail, lumpy items, highly seasonal items, where the demand comes in ones or twos, those are the ones where a toolkit of machine learning to supplement standard methodologies is very important and allows for better statistical forecast to then support the art of supply chain planning.
So how challenging is managing the long tail?
It is not only challenging, but it's a struggle that's been recurring over the last couple of years, both for our European customers and our North American customers. It's come up repeatedly in our survey results as one of the top challenges, if not the top challenge. Our customer base is in retail, and even retailers struggle with how do you manage these lumpy demand items, these long tail assortments. So it's why we focused our efforts both in the long tail and the short tail for our machine learning.
And so why are slow movers so challenging?
It's unpredictable. It's unpredictable in terms of when the lumps of demand come in, when the machine failures occur, and those parts need to be available. And because it's lumpy, because it's a long tail, when you have fast-moving items, you can predict the seasonality. When it's a long tail, when the demand comes in one or two parts, one or two repair parts, one or two items a year even, it's harder to figure out when that item ought to be stocked and when that demand is going to occur in a statistical forecast. Yeah. So it's easy to take an average of that. That's a traditional approach. And what happens is you end up with much more inventory than you need, or it's not stocked in the right location.
Yeah. So what is the way to resolve all this?
So we've brought to bear a number of sophisticated techniques, and one of them is intermittent demand forecasting. So it's a methodology that we've brought as a toolkit to really look at what is the frequency of when demand happens versus simply looking at what demand looks like. So it's a specialized technique to look at multiple attributes in the demand instead of a single attribute, which is what is an average demand? What would that average demand look like? Because some intermittent demand items have a predictable cycle of what time elapses in between demand. So by using some machine learning techniques, we've been able to reduce the forecast deviation and standard deviation around the forecast and improve the forecast accuracy. And it's not massive changes. We're not improving forecast accuracy by 100%, but supply chain planning has a lot of complexity, and one of the complexities of it is that when you reach higher and higher service levels, it creates exponentially larger investments in inventory to achieve higher service levels. You can never really achieve 100% service level because there may be some event that causes demand to exceed what you have on hand. So when you make incremental improvements, in this case 4 to 8% improvements in forecast accuracy, it actually is an outsized. It's a much bigger impact in terms of the ability to meet the same service level, make sure that there's availability of the part with a much lower dollar investment or euro investment in inventory. And I think that's what's really impactful. And when you look at these large assortments, the long tail, that can really tie up a lot of the money that's been invested, the working capital that's invested in it.
Yeah, Martin mentioned just the min-max methodology. It sounds simple, but could you explain about how you can improve the min-max methodology?
Yeah, so intelligent min-max is actually a replenishment approach. So, it's not looking at demand forecasting in isolation and then hoping that replenishment gets better. It's actually a way of using machine learning techniques for better replenishment. So it's not a demand forecasting technique. After you've improved the demand forecast, there's some intelligence in actually selecting which demand forecasting algorithm to use. And when the switch is made, now what do you do with a demand forecast? That's where you have to replenish to brackets. You can't just order piece part. You need to fill the truck. You need to fill the container. You need to meet certain supplier bracketing, what we call a supplier order quantity or SOQ. And intelligent min-max is a way of optimizing that based on what is these lumpy demand items, these long tail items, and how do you actually replenish better? How do you fill the truck, fill the container, or fill up to these brackets using more intelligent approaches? Because you're not just ordering in isolation, you're looking over a horizon. The science is to determine when you actually build these orders. And this is a technique to actually improve that replenishment recommendation looking over the forecast horizon.
So, and what are the benefits? What do you gain from all this intelligent min-max?
Yeah, so I mentioned already that when you take incremental approaches to improvements in forecast accuracy, you can significantly free up working capital. When you take an intelligent min-max approach, the advantage is that you're improving supplier order. But then you have to fill it up with the other remaining items. And if you don't do that intelligently, you're spending a lot of money on inventory that you're not going to need for a long period of time. And so, it's also, building up that inventory. You start to increase, warehouse and filling up the warehouse. And the tighter the fill in a warehouse is or a location, the more inefficient it is. We've also found that some of these approaches help to actually improve predictability of supplier volatility. We found over the last 12 months that, Martin already mentioned, increased demand on e-commerce channels, and what then results in increased price sensitivity. We've also found that there's increased supplier volatility. These peaks in demand ripple through the supply chain, and when product isn't available or not all of it is available, replenishment needs to get more intelligent about how you account for supplier volatility and supplier lead time volatility.
But I reckon that you have to have automated recommendations which kind of min-max rule you should apply, because otherwise, it has to do all this. So you need some machine learning to apply this intelligent min-max.
Yeah, exactly. And you brought up a great point earlier, which is it's a maturity curve. And so we feel it's very important, intelligent min-max and intermittent demand forecasting, these techniques for the long tail of the assortment, to be very transparent about why we're making that recommendation for how the selection criteria is being used to choose these different methodologies and what the impact is. Because as you march up the maturity curve, no one goes to automation right away, because you need to trust. What the recommendation is, and we're firm believers that the 90s was the era of the black box, and it didn't work. Handing over controls really doesn't allow you to apply the art of supply chain planning. So, we believe that it's important to have recommendations and to adopt automation as you gain confidence in the recommendations. And then over time, as you increase the amount of automation and the amount of replenishment orders and recommendations that are passing straight through the system, that's what allows you to free up to do things like order cycle optimization, forward buy, and investment buy evaluations that are more strategic activities in replenishment.
So you just talked about the slow movers. How do all this relate to the fast movers?
Yeah. So great question. So we can't ignore the fast movers. They have a great impact, an outsized impact in terms of sales units and revenue. And so, we've also done some investments recently in two big machine learning techniques. One is auto regression, which is not historical, old school regression, where when you look at linear and nonlinear regression, it's just fitting a curve, but it's not accounting for how recent should that be. And we found that that's really come true over the last 12 months, where you need some intelligent prediction, not only in what the demand curve looks like and what a demand forecast looks like, but which items, which markets, by product location, where is more recent data more applicable, and what part of the history makes sense. And certainly anyone on this call who's involved with supply chain planning appreciates the volatility over the last 12 months as different end customer demand has changed, and it's rippled up through the multi-echelon network. As what we call on-premise, but as restaurants close, as certain markets close, when you operate across many of these markets, these closures and reopenings really cycle and create demand volatility. And in using an auto regression approach allows you to be more intelligent about how fast the forecast should react to that shift.
Could you give an estimation what kind of results you get out of this?
Yeah, so it depends. I don't like to use that consulting answer because it depends on what industry you're in and what proportion of your assortment is fast moving and what is shorter life cycle. But we found that in food and beverage, in wine and spirits, it's had a huge impact on forecast accuracy improvements. We've actually seen, in this analysis here, across the set of customers, we're saying 1 to 4% accuracy improvement. Mm-hmm. But in food and beverage, wine and spirits, where there's a heavy dependency on perishable items, we've seen 4 to 8%, which is, for statisticians in the audience, it's a hugely significant improvement in forecast accuracy.
So we now talked about autoregressive results, but now let's talk to machine learning, because a lot of people talk about machine learning, and maybe you can explain what it is and how you apply it in forecasting.
Yeah, so we have implemented a neural networking forecast approach. It's one of the tools in the toolkit, and what it's doing is looking at multiple attributes of the demand. It's what Martin talked about earlier. There's, it's not just enough to look at historical and try to match curves. It's trying to determine which attributes are more influential than others. And what a neural network does, in simplistic terms, is look at the attributes of the demand and figure out which are more influential than others, and put a weighting factor on this set of attributes. And do that, test that hypothesis to create different weightings, and then lock into a final set of weighting criteria at a very granular level, at a product location level or a product market level. And once it's tested the hypothesis and set and adjusted and refined over time, it locks in these weights It will certainly learn and improve them and tweak them over time. But that's allowed us to, especially for these fast-moving items, show the same results in terms of forecast accuracy improvements.
So you mentioned that the other regressive results were, between 1% and 4%. So what kind of result do you expect from machine learning?
A larger impact. I mentioned that the 1% to 4%, we've actually seen higher results for some product categories and customers that have a heavier influence. For the neural networking approach, that approach, the baseline improvement for these fast-moving items is 2% to 6%. But same thing for a lot of fast-moving items or customers in industries with a lot of fast-moving items. Same thing. We're actually seeing, I believe it's 4% to 8%, all the way up to 10% improvement for some product categories.
And if you combine it?
When we combine it, the baseline of the 2.5% and the 3.4%, average 3.9%. So, it's important. It's kind of a value multiplier of having these forecast accuracy improvements in both methodologies allows on average an even higher result because the intelligent selection criteria has more to choose from. It's actually why, as a whole, having in your toolkit long tail and fast-moving items, you end up having significant improvements because you have more to choose from in terms of approaches. And that changes over time. There's supplier volatility changes, items in your assortment move in and out, not only of seasonal demand, but in terms of beginning of life versus end of life. So you do see over time that certain items in your assortment behave differently. Mm-hmm. And so the more you have to choose from, the more over time you have success in picking the right approach.
So, but in the commercial world, there are a lot of events, promotions and prize wars. So how do you make sure that you have this all in one model?
Yeah. So, that's a great point. And this really speaks to some degree now the overlap and what is, demand shaping. So causal forecasting, the last 12 months have seen, increases in price sensitivity, increases in sales direct to consumer, and that's for distributors as well as for manufacturers. And that's been a trend that's been ongoing. It's simply been accelerated over the last 12 to 18 months. And because of that, price is a large determinant in demand. And so causal and event forecasting, and I'm not to say that promotions are the only thing, price promotions are the only things that have influenced sort of peaks in demand. There are other events. And you would imagine that if there's a World Cup game, that, when we go back to where large crowds can exist, viewing a football match, that in those markets, there is peaks in demand. So there are, geographic peaks that influence demand and other causal factors that even can include weather. And, when I say weather, there is seasonality to weather that can influence demand. But I'm talking about exceptions to that. And when there are large exceptions to baseline, attributes, be it weather or pricing, then this causal and event forecasting looks at historical attributes of those events and those causal factors, determines which attributes have the most influence. And then when you can control it, when you can predict it, you should know when you're going to run a promotion. And it starts to speak to demand shaping, but you should account for that in your demand.
So I have a question from the audience related to this. So the question is, what are the typical forecast horizons, and how rapidly can the forecast react to new exogenous events like weather events, social media spikes?
Yeah. So weather, it depends. It's another consulting answer. It depends on what the product category is. Weather tends to be harder to predict anything beyond a few weeks, there's or even a week. But when it is influential on a product category, when you work with food and food and beverage, hot weather or high temperature spikes that are predicted to come in for certain product categories, the traditional one that's used is ice cream, but there's cold beverages as well. There's a big peak in demand. When you look at exceptions to bad weather, it also influences auto parts with collision parts. So it depends on the category. With promotions and the greater influence of pricing, promotions are certainly going to influence demand, and those can be planned out, 6, 8 months in advance. And with demand shaping, it actually goes to not only forecasting out what the demand impact is, but what would be a better promotion to run. And that's when you have to tie in the balance of supply and demand. If you have control of something like a promotion, whether you certainly don't have control over, with something like a promotion, you shouldn't run promotion on something that's critically short. And that's where organizationally, historically, sometimes the marketing department isn't connected closely with supply chain planning, and why we believe pricing should be, a supply chain planning function, to be honest.
Yeah. But also, what I'm seeing, a lot of CPG manufacturers are struggling if they accept an offer of a promotion from a retailer. But with this kind of environment, you know for sure if you want to accept or go into this offer of this promotion from a retailer. So it's not always the case that you should want this kind of promotion slot offered by the retailer.
Yeah, it's a great point. CPG companies, it's interesting that historically CPG companies have been the ones that have dictated what are promotions, and it's typically because they want to manage their inventory. They want to manage their margins, but they are the furthest away from that end customer demand. When you have intelligent prediction, the closer you get to customer demand, the better the statistical forecast is to plan out what that, how you could influence a demand based on changes in price, be it, promotions and promoted prices versus even an everyday baseline price. And so, I found that the balance of power has shifted. For people that adopt intelligent prediction, they actually can go back to their suppliers, back to their, a retailer can go back to the CPG providers because they have a better idea of what the forecast horizon looks like. And so they can go and suggest, and it's a stronger negotiation to go back to the CPG companies to tell them which items should be more receptive to promotional activity and which will be more influenced by price and other customer activities. Beyond a 12-month forecast, it goes to what Martin mentioned, which is an S&OP, S&OP processes and this collaboration. Sales is probably very optimistic about what a sales looks like by individual customer or customer category, but that has to be backed up with inventory investments. And when you have to throw a lot of inventory dollars or inventory euros to support a very optimistic plan. So it's this collaboration, and when you account for planned price increases or decreases, that helps to make a better planning process.
So what are the ways to make this optimal? So how do you churn this, and how do you what are the levers?
Yeah, so great question. So when you think of price, when you're changing the price, an everyday price, new product introduction, or even an end of life markdown, that should go into the demand forecast. That should go immediately, especially by channel. If when you're changing price on an e-commerce channel or for a highly price sensitive or commoditized product category, that should be fed directly into a demand forecast. On the flip side, when demand forecast changes and your replenishment recommendations change, it's going to change your inventory plan. And that inventory information should be accounted for in a pricing decision. And this is the crawl, walk, run, the maturity curve. And I see too often that pricing decisions are made in isolation, and they don't account for the fact that you should not drop price on something that's critically short, particularly commodity items that are highly price sensitive. So that inventory information should be accounted for when you're making pricing decisions. And that's, the short-term interaction, the optimization that should happen when you're making a replenishment decision and when you're making a pricing decision. Longer term, when you look at next year's price list, it not only has to account for costs, but it should be fed into an S&OP process. But that goes beyond the short-term forecast.
So we get to at the end of this webinar. After this slide, we get an example from I think Oslo or somewhere in Scandinavia. So how do you relate to this? What does demand shaping look like?
Improvements. It's not just the balance of you leveraging the science of we talked about the demand forecasting techniques. It starts with a better leveraging of the data that you have using better science, and that's not just for demand forecasting. It's also for pricing. I mentioned earlier there are also techniques you can use, machine learning techniques, to measure price sensitivity or lack thereof in a long tail of the assortment. And these better predictions, these tied closer to customers and customer demand, which is this point around real customers, real prediction, results in statistically better recommendations that enter into the art of, and so it's real results. Incremental improvements in forecast accuracy and price sensitivity measurement yield large financial results.
And here you see an example from Scandinavia, I think.
Yeah, and it's showing that when we implement these new techniques, when the selection criteria kicks in, in the middle of the chart, you can see that the volatility in the prediction and the improvement in the forecast accuracy jumps up. So it's it smooths out the predictions and the variance between what is forecast and what is actual. So it shows a direct result of machine learning doing a better prediction and a much smaller variance in what is forecasted versus what is realized as actual demand.
Right. We get to the questions, and we already have some questions popping in. I want to reassure you, after the hour, we have 30 minutes into the lounge, so you have to have questions, more questions, or if you want to speak directly to Martin or Cliff or myself. We'll go into the lounge after the hour, so we have the next 30 minutes to talk further. But great question. Can and how the models accommodate supply from competitors as an influencer to your demand?
Yeah, I mean that has applicability to a demand forecast as well as price sensitivity measurement. So the availability of supply from competitors is actually more influential on price sensitivity, and price sensitivity is an inherent measure of the substitutability of a product. You can imagine that longer term or long tail items, especially captive items that are very unique to the provider, don't have much price sensitivity because there really isn't a competitive substitute. But the more there is competitive substitute and competitive availability, we do pull that information in so that it's not only measuring it over time, but it's actually measuring how demand is influenced based on your availability and your price relative to individual competitors. And it helps significantly when you're planning out, because when you're collecting this information, it can be very expensive. But it tells you over time which competitors you should be worried about by which product category.
We are almost in the hour now. We have one final question, but after this, if you have more questions, make sure you can talk to us in the lounge, the online lounge. do kind of a Zoom meeting afterwards, 30 minutes. So last question, are the calculations with the auto-regressive and neural network functionality a standard set of commonly recognized math and statistical analysis that you source from statistical experts, or is it proprietary calculations developed by Blue Ridge?
It's proprietary. We took what is available neural networking and statistical models and engines, and then applied them in our solution. I mentioned it earlier. Intelligent min-max is actually a machine learning driven approach for better replenishment recommendations, and so that is proprietary. The way we've taken the engines and leveraged them in our demand forecast and our replenishment recommendations.
So with this, thank you for all this information. There's more. On one hand, Supply Chain Media has developed an online end-to-end assessment to make sure to recognize your white spot. On the right-hand side, you see a great overview of what Blue Ridge actually also can deliver as a resource for all kind of expertise. Next week, we have more on an analytical area, a webinar. But with this, I would like to thank you, Martin and Cliff, for your expertise. So thank you for this. And I will speak to you later on in the lounge. So the next 30 minutes will be in the lounge. And to all the participants, I want to thank you for for watching and for your questions. And if you want to further, I'm going to wrap up, and we'll be seeing you next week in another webinar, or just after this. We'll be there in the lounge. So, stay tuned, hang on. If you want to go into the lounge, we will be there, Cliff, Martin, and myself. And you can also talk to each other, to other participants in this audience. Thanks again, and maybe see you next week, or I see you later in the lounge. Thank you, and bye-bye.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you. Talk.